This is a secret level clearance video for those contributing at the $5 level. Last week we covered cognitive dissonance and the normality bias, and this week we are going to continue to study the concept of bias, but as used in acquiring a target for a psychological operation. Understanding our own bias when we look at things like this is very, very important. When you talk about the normality bias or the normalcy bias, where people have a tendency to believe things are going to be okay right up into the point that they're not, well, everybody has a different definition of okay. Everybody has a different definition of what an average, normal, everyday, acceptable situation is. And Venezuela being a good example, there are some people there that were incredibly wealthy, that are living much more Spartan lifestyles than they are now, and they call it apocalypse. But the level they're living at now, there are people there that would be overjoyed to have what they have. So sometimes it's about perception, our own bias in looking at things that can completely divorce our own mental state from reality. In this particular picture I pulled up, of course, two people that are wearing glasses that are blue would see folks that liked yellow as having liked green. This happens in politics. This happens even as men and women discuss things, because we inherently see things differently just because of who we are. So, for example, me as a middle-aged white guy, I would probably not be a very good choice of a person to arrange a psychological operation on, let's say, African American teenagers. Because I know what the perceptions of people my age of them are, generally speaking, but that's divorced from the actual reality, because I don't have any real experience in that culture amongst those people. It's just not something I would be good at. Someone my age that perhaps was an African American male, if our targets were teenage African American males, would probably be a better choice, having been one himself. But even he would have a problem because he came from, let's say he's 50 years old like I am. He was brought up in an entirely different era, a different genre. So I don't think that would probably be something where they would, if the powers that be, would choose a person like that to run that type of a psychological operation. It's tough to be your own manager that way. That's why a lot of intelligence people have handlers, because you need somebody independent. You need somebody divorced from the person actually running the operation, so that they can have oversight, overwatch, and make decisions that are more based in reality than based in perception. So it's something we all, including myself, have to be very careful of. Intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance are all very, very important aspects of any psychological operation. Surveillance especially, because you can glean a great deal from just watching. And let's see if I can bring up a tab here real quick that I thought was indicative of this. Now, here we see this guy. He's on top of his car, and here's a girl who says, you can really tell a lot about a man by the type of car he drives. Well, some might say that you could tell a lot about a man who would ignore leg day at the gym while focusing on his upper body. That'd be one perception. You can tell a lot about a guy who would literally physically stand on top of the roof of his car, causing all sorts of damage. You can tell a lot about a guy who would have a haircut that would stick up like this. See, it's all about perceptions. It's all about what exactly any one particular person would look at. And that's the most important thing in any psychological operation. If I were to, say, run a psychological operation on, let me see if I can think of a good example here. I'll just say people that voted for Donald Trump. Let's just say that, because it's an easy group. It's 62 million of them. Well, I would have to narrow that down, of course, to which specific people would I target and why. Based on not why would I do the psychological operation, but why did they vote for him? Because that reasoning, that basis of action, will determine my basis of action, so that I'm not clouded by my own perception bias. We see a lot of this, and even everyone is susceptible to this. This idea of, oh, you see incredibly biased reports out of the media from both sides, and you do your own research, not realizing that the research, the stuff that you're looking at online, the reason it's online is because it's being aimed at certain people for a certain reason. So the idea of finding anything independent is remote. It's why this channel uses a lot of different types of information that aren't opinion-based to create a picture for folks. And it's hard to find that. It's incredibly difficult to find the sources of media that will paint a proper picture of what's happening in any one particular situation. That's why I've always suggested using the Google tool search, where if something is in the media now, more than likely everything you're going to see about it is going to be biased one way or the other in searches that are recent. If you take that subject and you go back 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and you research what things were saying about it then, when it wasn't in the media, when it wasn't in the spotlight, that's when you're going to find the best information. The confirmation bias. These are the facts, and this is what you believe, and this little bit in here is, of course, what everybody holds on to. Including myself. I have to watch myself doing this all the time. Especially making YouTube videos, because, of course, you want to put out videos that your audience enjoys, things that they like hearing, whether they know they like hearing it or not. But you have to watch doing that, because sometimes that doesn't always jive with 99% of what the facts say. How this works in psychological operations is you have to understand your target. And if you're biased against your target, if you do not have a proper mental handle on what's going on with your target, your psychological operation will fail miserably. And if you feel that you're being the victim of a psychological operation, you're more than likely going to have to look at your own biases that way too. When someone says something you disagree with, when someone says something that just sets off alarm bells in your head, instead of going after the person, trying to punch your buttons, maybe look at why maybe those are buttons to begin with in your mind. And that's a tough thing for people to do. It really is. You go through a lot of classes like this in intelligence that you end up realizing that the study is more a study of you than the study of anyone else. And stepping out of your own person and stepping out of your own belief system so that you can be independent and that you can operate in an effective way is 99% of the battle. Everything else is easy after that. So we will leave it there. There's a lot of different biases out there. And let me see if I can find the right tab I wanted to leave with here. There's 40 of them. Top 40 common unconscious biases. And if you guys want to do some independent study, looking into these would definitely give you an advantage. Selective perception is huge. Overconfidence bias, placebo effect, um, confirmation bias we've talked about, familiarity bias. It's no one is immune. I don't care who you are. I don't care how well trained you are. It's just part of being a human being. But understanding it is most of the battle. So we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your support. I very, very much appreciate it. You have given the Patreon channel of Florida Muckee the ability to support channels, other channels, that have been demonetized on YouTube. That's a lot of what we're doing. We are taking voices that even the Florida Muckee doesn't agree with, but believes should have a voice, and helping them stay afloat so that we can have a conversation where everyone is invited to the table regardless of monetization or not. So you are greatly appreciated, and we will continue to do intelligence training every single week. Every Monday, it will be the secret level clearance day. Every Tuesday will be top secret. Every Wednesday will be special access need to know. Every Thursday will be the round table. And every Friday will be the Muckee Masters. And then on the weekends, as warrants normal news, we will cover things that aren't training related. So, once again, thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Thank you.